Hey everyone, welcome to Straight Up Startups. It is Tuesday, November 1st. Like always, I'm joined with my friend Nick Hughes. Nick, how you doing today?
Doing good, Connor. Doing
Nice.
good.
What's new on your side of the business?
Oh man, some on the Founders Live side of business, had some interesting conversations this week, and let's just say there seems to be some interest for Feature Friday live, like in location events around the country. So that's possibly the direction things are going, and so everyone should kind of keep their eye out for that.
That's fantastic. So maybe hosting some Feature Fridays in some other cities?
Oh yeah, on the docket right now, already interested is LA, Dallas, and possibly St. Louis.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on that. I wish you the best, and I can't wait to see those grow.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing Feature Friday for? A couple years now, right?
Yeah, 2.5 years, and it's totally grown in Seattle. And I think there's starting to be this like playbook that's starting to come together. And I think if you look at what Feature Friday is, basically a monthly event celebrating talent in Seattle, and it could be in any city, and then possibly tying back into the Founders Live platform. And so we're looking at that pretty strongly.
Great. Fantastic. Well, Nick, let's jump into the topics to give you guys a little bit of rundown about what we're talking about today. I really like the topics we're talking about. Obviously, Vine going out, that's kind of the news part, but some of the topics that are going to help all the founders listening to us today is just talking about finding the right path, alternatives to MBAs, really big focus on reading today, talking about all the different contracting and freelancing resources, and that kind of bundles in with some of the Uber discussion that's been going on this week. So let's jump into the first topic we have here. It came from a Medium article, which kind of seems to be where all of our content's coming from now. James Altucher wrote, "How do you find the right path?" And he talks about his entrepreneurial journey going through, and he'd get really into something, and then he just realized that it really wasn't for him, right? He would get into a startup, he wrote a book, he sold a business, and he never really felt completely fulfilled. So Nick, my question for you is how do you know inside that you're on the right path? And is there anything that you do to keep reestablishing that question so you know that you're doing the right thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and I think it's a tough answer for anyone to find, and it really just requires deep insight and self-inquiry to really understand where you are, what you're doing. Do you find it beneficial? Do you find do you find satisfaction through it? Is it getting you results, whether it's financial or just other results that are positive? And I think it's a tough question for everyone. For me personally, I feel I'm kind of going through it right now, and I'm just really looking at the things in my life, and what I'm trying to do is look at what is the world giving, what is it telling me back? You can bang your head so many times and so many years on trying to like build one company and do sales and this and that, and if it's not taking hold, the world is telling you something, and then you turn around and you're doing this one other thing, and you're doing it for fun, and people are grabbing a hold of it, and they're like, man, you're great at this, you're doing this is awesome, I love this app or whatever. And so for me, what seems to be working is to at least be aware of how the world and what the world is telling me and how they're telling it to me. And I think that's the path that is starting to evolve. And just to kind of bring this, I've known this writer and this author for a while, not personally, but I've read him a lot. And there's some of his writing that I don't fully enjoy reading, just the way that he kind of comes across. But I think what he's saying that's true is a few things. One, there's many paths in this world. We kind of like, we're in a world now where you do a lot of stuff in the course of your life. But two, I think you really have to listen to the world and what it's telling you and the results that you're getting and how you feel inside, to find out if you're on the right path or not.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a big piece of the founder and entrepreneurial journey is really that that process of self-discovery, and you're really never going to know completely about what's going on or the position you're in. But I think his big point here is that you really need to reflect on the journey. And I know it's really cliche to say, it's more about the journey than well, however it goes, the end result of where you end up. And I think that's really important as a founder. And that's why we're seeing now a lot of people just saying you need to write as much as you can. You need to reflect on these things. Take the time to, whether it's meditate or document your entire experience. So it gives you a chance to just reflect on all the different things that you've done, so you can learn and do something better, because the past is the past. It's going to be, the most important part is about the decisions you're going to make for the future. And so I think it's really interesting kind of how he came back down. He's like, I've been married, I've been divorced, I've written all these books, I've done startups, I've pitched all these places. But it really, he should have appreciated it more when he was going through it, and all the experiences that he had and everything that he learned has really made him what he is today, and is going to add to the future value of tomorrow for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find what's interesting is we're going to be the next topic here. We'll transition in a second, but I find myself saying this more often, where it's, just doing a lot of different things in your life will give you a wide range perspective, will give you a wide range of skill set, and in the end, it allows you to more opportunities to find that right path. And who knows, maybe the right path is actually doing 4, 5, 6 different things, maybe more. But yeah, this is a very introspective type of question. There's no right answer because everyone's different. But yeah, it's enjoy the journey is definitely a lesson that we should all pay attention to. So we're going to transition here. We're going to transition actually to the next topic is actually another Medium post, but this is written by David Kadavi, author of Design for Hackers, and you can find him at kadavi.net. And he basically is describing his pursuit of an MBA, and he calls it the alternative MBA. He pretty much, long story short, he had he had like 6 digits in savings and 401k and all that. He basically pulled out $40,000 and spent a year in just very dedicated study, growth, and challenge, and pretty much summing it up saying, I spent $40,000 within a year to a year and a half and really got myself an MBA. And I'll ask you, Connor, what do you think about that concept of either, besides going or not going to MBA, a traditional MBA school, and just basically self-investing in real life experiences to gain that knowledge?
I kind of, and as the last couple of years of my life have gone on, I thought it seems to be a better option for a lot of people. And I have started to hear more stories about people kind of choose one or the other. And I have gone through, since I graduated from business school, it's about like when I've always wanted to go get my MBA, but when is the right time? And I always was fearful for a lot of the students who went right after college, because you just didn't have the experience or the know-how about the world. I still don't think I know enough to go into an MBA class and really contribute or solidify my path on where I want to go. So this story reminded me a lot of Tim Ferriss' story, and I've talked about him a lot, but he did the same thing. Instead of going back to school, he just took this money that he had and invested in startups, and that was how he learned, and obviously got him to where he is today. So it's really cool. The only problem is you got to have the money to do it, which is kind of tough. Where if you are going to get an MBA, I guess you could take out a loan. For me, I'm not really sure. I haven't been convinced that debt is going to provide more value, specifically if you're not going to one of the top 25 best MBA schools that are out there, because it's so much about networking. But that's kind of what I felt like my last 3 years in startups have been, is kind of a millennial's view of an MBA, by working, kind of grinding, not making a ton of money, learning different skill sets from software development to sales to management, specifically financial management, networking, kind of all those different principles that you would learn typically in business school. And yeah, I think starting a company is just as good as spending $40K on a piece of paper, in my opinion, because you can learn just as much and become a better entrepreneur after it. But yeah, I'm still kind of up in the air. I would like to go get that piece of paper because I think it just is a credential that is nice to have. But I have started to lean more towards, like, if I had 40K to spend and take a year off and just base it on education, that would be a great choice.
Yeah, yeah. He brings up a few good points here, which is one was he's asking himself, do I want to end up as a mid-level executive at a larger company? And if you do, which, look, that's great if you want it. That's great if you don't want it. But I think you really have to look at, an MBA from a very reputable university still holds incredible value if you want to end up in management or like climbing that ladder in the way that a lot of people do. But if your value, if you're looking at and you value more like risky business ventures, experiencing the growth of the startup and building, possibly being a founder and really building wealth from the equity and ownership standpoint, I don't think MBAs today, well, yes, like the debt and all that, I don't think that is going to provide people the like from ground up, all the nuts and bolts and all that stuff that nitty gritty. It's not going to give you that, and you're going to end up 150K in debt, and then you possibly might have a decent paying job. You'll pay that back, but you're going to find yourself 10 years into something that you maybe not enjoy, and now you're like, shit, like I'm far down this path, and I actually am not happy. And so it's important to step back and realize, what type of life do you want? What sort of professional and business experience and position do you want? And then determine that. But I think he was smart in the sense that he's like, you know what? I need education. I'm going to invest in this way. And clearly, yeah, if you have the money, you can do that. Not a lot of us actually have he had like 140K ready to liquidate. And so clearly, like, some people can do it, some people don't. But yeah, that's my take, is like, I think it was smart that he wanted to invest in his future. I think it was smart that he looked at the two paths and he chose, I'm going to independently study, I'm going to put myself in startup environments. He basically was paying himself for a year on a very low level, and clearly he's doing really well, and I think it paid off for him.
Yeah, I think the hardest part about it is really staying motivated, right? You have to, what's great about the educational system is it gives you an agenda and a schedule that you need to stick by and you need to deliver. When you're doing it on your own and you're just trying to live life, I think it could be very easy to get distracted or just take a turn that maybe isn't about developing yourself, and you really have to stay very focused. And I think that would be the hardest part for me. Just to remember every single day, like, every day is my MBA and I need to focus on that. But tough decisions. And speaking of tough decisions, the next topic we have is kind of our one news topic here. Is Twitter decided this week to shut down Vine, which maybe I think everyone kind of forgot about Vine, obviously, but they were only around for about 3 years, got acquired by Twitter, and then a lot of the users jumped ship. They went to Instagram, went to YouTube, and they're doing new things. And so, Nick, what's your opinion? I'm not sure if you were a huge Vine user, but why just shut it down and not sell it to someone and make a little bit of money? Why do you think Twitter made the decision that they did?
I think Twitter made that decision based on a lot of the pressures they're under right now. I mean, let's be honest. I think we can all at least understand that it's been a rough year for Twitter. It seems like they were actually shopping themselves around to sell the entire company, and it didn't come together. And I think this is what we're going to see. This is a leading indicator. This is my guess of some trimming of the fat on Twitter, even though that they don't have a ton of product lines, but they had to refocus. And Vine. What's interesting is, I wasn't a huge Vine user, but you could probably see how over time, recently there's been less postings of Vines, and it just probably was like, look, we can't continue to uphold this arm of the product when it's not being used very much. I think they're really doubling down on the live content experience, especially like sports, and that just Twitter is really the heartbeat of the world, or at least heartbeat of the connected world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they're going to continue to focus on that, and that's why you're seeing more Periscope stuff, and just like in terms of live streaming of even sports. So that's my guess. But I don't know. So Vine, was it up to 6-second videos?
Yep, 6-second videos.
Yeah, and I think they're proving that that was not, and they're probably getting their butt kicked on that by Snapchat.
Yes. So. Exactly. And so when Vine came out, it was pretty, I don't want to say it was revolutionary, but it was really big because no one was they were the first ones except YouTube to take mobile focused video content and really start syndicating it all through the phones. And yeah, I think they just got squeezed out of the market because they were one of the first, and then so many other things came out. All the live streaming obviously put a big hindrance on them. And then Snapchat really was the icing on the cake to shut them down because once, they're doing 10 seconds clips, but they were just combining them all. Once that came out and the popularity grew, just Vine didn't stand a chance. But I really think that Twitter mishandled Vine and they didn't integrate it well enough. I heard a podcast earlier this week about the number one Vine star. His name was King Bach, B-A-C-H. And he was number one Vine star, and he had never had a conversation with Twitter, right? Mm-hmm. Like Twitter was not taking advantage of all the content creators on Vine that were getting millions of views every single day. And then so it got to a point where they finally got rid of them, right? And a lot of these Vine people jumped ship and went to Instagram, went to YouTube, went to these other platforms that were going to value them a little bit more. So now that I'm hearing some of these stories about how disconnected Twitter was in their acquisition for Vine and how they didn't really connect with a lot of those people who were creating content early on, it's no surprise. But I have pointed out, this article points out that Pornhub was trying to buy Vine, which I think could just be probably a huge market because pornography is that big. But it just has that GIF sense to it. And I could see why Twitter didn't want to sell them because they're so connected with Vine that if Vine all of a sudden became a bunch of spam, they're going to have a Tumblr problem. And then it's just all going to be it's going to look really bad for them. So I think shutting it down was kind of their only option if Pornhub was the only buyer in there.
That's tough choice, right?
Yes, very tough choice.
So moving on here, our next topic is reading as a secret weapon, and I happen to really agree with this topic. But another Medium post here, and really just tapping into the concept of daily reading and how it has incredibly changed this individual's life. Do you remember his name at all?
It's John Westenberg.
Oh, it's your boy.
Yeah, we've talked about him a couple times now.
Yeah, it's your boy. And, what he's saying here is, it is a secret weapon. It really is helping him with his writing. It's helping him with his comprehension, and really just keeps him on top of the game. Do you agree with this?
100%. And what I agree most, because I know you and I are both big readers, I definitely do my daily morning routine of consuming all of the news. But over especially the last year, I'm really tired of business books. And so I was really happy to see someone who is followed by a ton of people. I mean, he's probably one of the biggest influencers on Medium. And he's going out saying even if you're in business or in startups, reading these business startup books isn't the only thing that's out there. So I was really happy to see that he was branching out into a bunch of fiction, science fiction. That was something about keeping your brain active and creative and being able to tap into this imagination that I really think we lose from when we were kids, right? When we were kids, you could walk around anywhere and it'd be some magical world, but it's really hard to do that as an adult and kind of fantasize about our fictional scenarios that you're in. And so I really appreciate that, because that's something that I'm a huge believer in, is just get your mind away from your business, and your startup can sometimes be the best way to recharge your batteries. And doing that every single night when I go to bed, like I'm reading, that's when I read fiction, because it's a time for me to rest my brain, get away from everything else, and kind of go, get into a dream state, should I say.
Yeah,
So I was really happy that he wrote that, and he emphasized that a lot in this article.
it's awesome. And he has a quote here. He writes in the article, "I read because there's so much more to the world than my corner of it. If I never tried to find it, I'd be limiting myself." And I totally agree with that. And I read every day, but I think I am at fault of being pretty narrowly focused in that, and mostly in tech and the business world and kind of what we're doing. But I really do need to expand out in fiction and other things, because I fully agree with them that it feeds creativity, it feeds imagination, it feeds it really does relax you and put you in a different world, so you're not thinking about the stresses and the challenges of your life. Or if you're an entrepreneur, that there's always the things to worry about and think about. But on the surface, I fully agree that I think he uses the correct term too, which is, it is a secret weapon. A lot of people are not reading as much as they should, and I think it keeps your mind grinding on new perspectives, and that is actually what's required to be successful in business, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. I think you chose a. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, just like the ability to kind of grasp things in new ways. And you read a book that's like 100 years old, and it might have a nugget of wisdom that you need to solve some of the problems you're dealing with right now.
Certainly. And this all comes back to empathy, right? I think empathy is always a theme. It's probably what I've determined, especially from all of our conversations, one of the most important qualities to work on, not necessarily have, but to continually be focused on improving, because you got to understand what's going on around the world, how other people, what it's like to walk in their shoes. And that's only going to make you a better founder and entrepreneur. But going on to the next topic here, it was an article by Quincy Larson. So I think we've quoted before on here from, he contributes to a free code camp. And the article was 6,000 freelancers talk about money, happiness, and their hopes for the future. And he starts off the article by saying that I believe a third of the U.S. workforce is now freelancing in some capacity, whether it's a short at-home project or a full-time job. And this is something that I've been, especially this year, been digging in a lot more, just trying to find extra forms of income, because as all the most successful entrepreneurs say, like, the way that you create wealth in your life is going to be by having multiple income streams. That creates a more passive income. It creates ways for, if something fails, you have backups and alternatives. And so I've really put a focus on having some freelance and having those opportunities. But Nick, I want to know about your experience with freelancing. Do you have any tips for anyone, or just any helpful information for anyone that's even interested in doing freelance?
Yeah, one of the points he makes in this article was basically, it's not doing the job that's the most difficult part. It's actually like reaching out to people, landing new gigs, and keeping that pipeline, if you want to call it that, full. And so I think I fully agree that, and we'll actually get to this point in the next one, but the advantages in the future of contracting, or like being a freelancer, they're immense if you value that. I think the freedom, the work where you want, you got deadlines and you have those sort of expectations, but it's a lot more in your hands, and that outweighs, in my opinion, the alternative, which is a full-time employee sitting in a desk. You get here at 8:30 and you leave at 6 or whatever, 5:30, whatever that is. I think that, like he mentions in there, it's not just doing your job. You might be a freelance designer and you're a great designer, but how are you going to get the gigs?
Yes.
That is the biggest thing, and you can't just think about, oh, well, I'm going to put myself on Upwork, okay, or Dribble. Like you have to really understand the benefits of freelancing is you can work wherever you want with who you want, but the downside is you have to continue to drive your pipeline of jobs so that you have, if one comes to a finish, you don't have any dead time. That's what can kill freelancers. Like they're all focused on the gig and the job they're doing at the time, but then that comes to an end. And if you didn't do the legwork before you were done, now you have maybe 2 months of scrambling to then find another paid gig. So that is the challenge. And I think just people going into freelancing need to understand that.
Yeah, exactly. And why I really wanted to share this with all the founders out there was just because this is kind of the lifestyle that if you're an entrepreneur or you want to be a founder, it's very similar to the lifestyle that you're trying to create, especially if your idea isn't fully developed, if you're trying to figure out revenue models, which almost every startup's trying to figure out. Like you really have to have that hustle, the creativity, the ingenuity and determination to be successful, to create that pipeline for yourself. And he doesn't talk, he kind of bounces around because he talks exactly like what you said, right? You have to line up the gigs, and it all comes down to sales, right? And it doesn't matter what type of entrepreneur you are, what you're working on. If you're a founder and you don't know how to sell your product, then you're going to really struggle, right? Maybe you're the diamond in the rough and the 0.01% that just has a product that's so great that everyone gets it right away and you don't have to say anything, but most likely not. I mean, you got to learn those sales skills. You got to learn to build relationships, networks, and ask for a referral. That's what I think is the biggest tip that so many people forget, whether it's in sales, freelancing, or you're just your normal employment. Like you got to ask for referrals from people that you did a good job with, right? If someone says you did a great job, then you need to return and say, who can you tell that I did a great job, right? Because it doesn't matter that you tell me that I did a great job. I need you to tell someone else so that they know and they tell someone else, and that's how you get new gigs and new work. And I mean, it's been going pretty well for me here the last couple of months. I know I've told you about it. And yeah, just something that I'm hoping to build on and create kind of a new lifestyle for myself.
Yeah, it's interesting, and this is a transition actually to our next question, our next point. I actually firmly believe that one of the most important aspects and decisions of our industry and our economy in from here on out and in the future is what is a contractor, what is an employee. And
Yes.
when you look at freelancers, when you look at, I mean, you want to call it the gig economy, whatever it is, when Uber drivers, renting your house out in Airbnb, doing remote freelance development or design work if you're if you're technically driven. What is crazy, and I think I understand that there's regulations from like 50, 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Crazy to me that there's this huge legality issue and financial. We're talking about taxes and then healthcare and all this stuff that are involved when you talk about a contractor, a 1099 contractor versus a full-time employee. And so the question to you is how, you've been a contractor and we all know, we all know the benefits there, but how do you see this actually transitioning? Because there's going to be a transition, but this is a huge issue. How do you see contractors being meshed into and treated equally to employees?
Yeah. So the article I thought was great because it actually kind of highlighted a lot of the points. And I think the court and the judges did, and the article states this, that they did their research, right? They really dug in and tried to understand like who has all the power, who has all the control. And they did realize that Uber has more control than the normal contractor or freelancer, whatever you want to call it, would have, right? They dictate, they give a route that the contractor can break. They have a bunch of conditions that they put on drivers. They interview all the drivers. So they do hold a lot of control, where a lot of times if you're a freelancer or contractor, there isn't that same partnership, where usually they're pretty exclusive. And so it makes sense. But I think I mean, the government's going to have to get in. It's going to be a worldwide government decision, unless it's country by country, state by state. They're really going to have to put some time into it. And I think there's going to be a new class of employee that's created with this gig economy. I just don't. There has to be something that is simpler and fits right in the middle of, are you a contractor or are you? I don't think it should be black and white anymore, because that is where the market is going. And there's so many jobs, like we said earlier, right? There's $1 trillion of freelance money generated every year now. Like, that's a significant amount of revenue going all over the place, and there's not really set rules or laws kind of anywhere about how that's going to be. So I think Uber and Airbnb are going to lead it. And when you had these going to be $1 trillion companies hiring this many, I think I saw that the #1 job in America right now is being a driver, right? Like, that is insane. And if you're going to have the #1 job, or you're going to be the #1 industry, like, you're going to get regulated in some type of way, but you also do need to be, you need to provide more to the employees, or half employees, whatever we want to call it. I don't think they need to give insurance, but maybe they provide options for people to go get their own insurance that, is affiliated with them.
Oh, yeah. And you just mentioned, when you look at, I mean, there's so many things, and I'm not saying that this is all, the employers or the bad guys, or even the government's the bad guys, but we're talking about insurance. Just if you're an Uber driver and you're doing this full time, it's on you to go get your own health insurance. If you are a delivery individual for Postmates and you're just trying to make it, and I mean, these people aren't making 100K. So, but then they got to go get their own insurance, and that's possibly more expensive. And, there is so many, like, putting money away for 401k, actually taking money out for taxes, as, that's not easy and fun or even straightforward as well. So being a contractor is presenting so many issues that it's going to probably take 5-10 years for this thing to shake out, but it ain't going nowhere. This is exactly the way more and more people are going to actually earn money. It is, and I think it's great for the economy. I think it provides people, as freelancing or just being more entrepreneurial than typically. But these things need to get worked out, and I think you're right. Like, in the end, a new class is going to be created. There's going to be some regulation, but I think a new industry will then form around providing them the benefits, or at least, like, here's your insurance, here's your healthcare, here's like your basic invoicing and tax, like collecting payments. I mean, that type of stuff is right now still, like, getting shaken out to try to figure out what it is. So this is huge, man, and I think there's many different, not only the transportation, driving, delivery, but there is a ton of industries that, like, pretty much the entire, quote, on demand, if it turns out to be a big deal, is hinging on the regulations of this.
Yeah, certainly. And the government needs to speed up, right? They need to evolve with the time and be able to make faster decisions. I know they're huge, big decisions, but the world's moving so fast nowadays that they do. But kind of moving on to the next subject comes from an author. His name is Ben, I believe it's who was former co-founder, or he was the co-founder of Cheeseburger. I know he just left. I can't remember who he joined on with, though. Or that's what the article is about, is who he's joining.
He joined on Y Combinator, yeah.
Yes, and so this I thought he was just joining the leadership team of Y Combinator, but he's actually getting in with a specific project. And so he wrote an article about, should I pursue my passion or my business? And he says the best advice I ever received is do what you love in the place you love with the people you love, which is pretty interesting because he started here in Seattle. Now he's down in San Francisco working for Y Combinator. And he's talking about he's on a research team for the New Cities Project as an explorer. And what his goal is to create an open, repeatable system for rapid city forming that will maximize human potential. So very related to what we were just talking about with, how are our cities and countries going to deal with the transforming ecosystem. And so question for you, Nick, just in general, I know we've talked about this before, but should I pursue my passion or should I pursue my business? And how do I make that decision?
Yeah, it's age-old question, man. I will side with Ben in the sense that he's basically saying follow follow your intuition, follow what you want to do, follow the drive that gets you up in the morning to spend the time with the people, to create a solution to a problem that you care about. So passion in the sense that you are driven to go do whatever it is you're doing versus just creating a business because on paper on the slide deck and on paper it makes financial sense and this thing could be huge and we're going to go do that. Like, follow your passion, I believe. But I think the nuance here is there are certain things that people are passionate about that don't allow for financial return to sustain themselves as people, and just in the slight, like, right, pay your rent and buy your food and all that stuff. So you have to be smart in what passion you're following and what you're structuring around that to be something that sustains yourself. If you choose that that's going to be the main thing. For instance, Founders Life. This thing, we started this thing in May. I started this thing in May because it is my passion. It's around everything that I do. We are still looking at how this will unfold into a business, but I believe 100% that it'll be a sustainable business. So I'm following my passion in this direction. I'm looking for how to put it in the right business state. And that's going to take some time, and it takes building the brand, and it takes building partnerships. But I'm for sure following my passion around this. And clearly that's not the only thing I'm working on, but that is how I see it. And so I think it falls on passion, but you have to figure out where that passion creates something that scales.
Yes, certainly. And I find it tough. The reason why I love doing the show with you, Nick, is you and I are just normal dudes, right? Like, we don't have millions of dollars. We're not driving Ferraris. Like, you and I wake up every morning and we grind every day, and then we go, oh shit, like it's 2 or 5 o'clock. I need to do this show, and we do the show, and then we go right back to working. Right? We don't have a billion Twitter followers. We're not like these famous guys. And so that's why I really appreciate the advice that you and I can give, because I think we can relate a lot more to all the entrepreneurs than most of these people that we quote on here or these big entrepreneurs we talk about. But he has provided, he busted his ass for a long time at Cheeseburger, right? He made a very successful, worldwide known brand. And now has the ability to move to San Francisco and work on something he's passionate about, which is great. But for the casual person like you or I, who are just trying to make it in the first place, I do think I'm kind of starting to get tired of do I do my passion or do I run my business? Because we are all so inefficient that you can definitely do both. Mm-hmm. There's no reason why you can't work on your passion project and build your business, or do something that is fulfilling on the side, on the weekends, in the mornings, or in the evenings, right? 1 hour a day is not a lot. And that adds up to 5 to 7 hours a week, and that compounds throughout the year. Everyone's got that amount of time, but it's where do you dedicate that time and where do you find your priorities? And so, yeah, I think it's just more about personal motivation. But I've also started living by not do what you love, but love what you do, right? We all have choices. We all can make decisions about jobs, where to live, what to do. Obviously, we have obligations that tie us down and force us to do certain things. But if you're going to take that job that you work 70 hours, right, to make that paycheck, like, you made that decision to take that job to make that kind of money, and you have to deal with it. So don't be complaining, right? Because there's other jobs out there, right? You can go drive a car now and make a basic income, right? And there are options out there for you. So make sure that whatever you do and you choose to wake up in the morning, that's what you choose to do. If not, make sure you find something else that's gonna to make you a little happier in your life.
Man, absolutely. Well said. I think we both can speak on this. I mean, yeah, we do this every week, pretty much every week, and we're setting aside time. And I start my day by pushing some things into Founders Live, and then I check it every so often throughout the day. But over time, this thing is going to build, and it is going to go from a passion into a business that I am passionate about, and that's really cool. And so yeah, it's like find the time, do the things that you need to do, cover the bills you need to cover, however you need to do that. But in the end, you're only going to, if you enjoy what you're doing, you're going to be happy and satisfied. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, you're going to be very, very frustrated.
Yes.
So last topic, this is interesting. Really cool post, I thought, from Scott Belsky. He's an investor. He's actually on the, he's a venture partner at Benchmark. And man, he basically brings up 5 forecasts for the future. And listing them off real quick, he says social media will become passive. Number 2, our augmented reality will be a land grab and always be under attack from brands. 3, interfaces will compete with the technology underneath. 4, autonomous vehicles in cities will become a public utility. And 5, we will transcend the tragedy of the commons with technology that aligns self-interests with community benefits. Connor, which one jumped out at you, and/or which one, if it's not on that list, do you have a forecast for the future?
So first I want to talk about brands, because he talks about we're going to be attacked by brands on our augmented reality. And yes, that's true. The thing is, we are never going to be able to get away from brands and technology, right? The brands and advertising and marketing is how so much of this ecosystem runs, right? And the big guys or the medium-sized guys got to pay to get more eyeballs, especially where tech is right now. Like, it's all about getting eyeballs and downloads and clicks and all that engagement. And so I don't think it's going to be. I want brands, and I think they're already starting to do this with the new ways that we create content through Snapchat and YouTube and all the other social media. I think the brands are getting smarter, to not be so strict on their brand standards anymore, right? If I'm Pepsi and I want some content creator to make a YouTube video for me, like, he's the expert, right? Some guy in a suit who pushes papers for Pepsi doesn't know how to make great content, right? And they used to restrict a lot of the brand guidelines now, but I think a lot of the companies are going, oh, these guys know how to get millions of views on YouTube. Let's let them put our best interest in mind, but make a great video and get all the hits. And so I think as content evolves, right, so we're still so early in the world of content creation that brands are just going to be more subtly placing things, because no one's buying a Pepsi because someone cool is drinking it, right? Everyone knows about Pepsi. All they need is a reminder in your brain that goes, oh yeah, Pepsi, like, that tastes good. Like, I want one. They don't need someone to go buy a Pepsi right now. So I think it's going to be more blend in to how social media works. And the one thing that I disagree with is social media will become passive. That I think those are opposites, right? Because social media is about being social, right? It's engagement. And I think here the passive side of social media is that they're distribution channels for content, which I totally agree, right? So many people just post all their stuff on Twitter to push it out there because they know it'll get eyeballs and get circulated, but there's not as much engagement. But I think at a core, social media is about being social. It's about interacting with other people, and it's a way to connect with other people that aren't in your immediate vicinity, and that's why it's grown so much.
Yeah.
And one last thing, as a prediction, I really like what he said about the public utility and autonomous vehicles. That's kind of related to the Uber conversation we had. Like, the cities really need to jump on top of that. And I know here in Washington, we're voting on getting a light rail system that's going to take 30 years to build all around our city. That's going to make it. But in 30 years, like, the car situation is going to be crazy. So that's kind of where the both arguments lie is the world's moving so fast. Why are we voting on this 30-year plan when 10 years down the line, all the cars could be autonomous and it might not even matter?
Yeah. There's a lot here, right?
Yeah.
I'll give an agreement and then also a prediction that I have. I would also say that the augmented reality is an interesting prediction. Basically, he's saying, right now we can control billboards, but can we control the brands when it's augmented reality with just things jumping around at us? So I think that's one. The all interesting thing about the tragedy of the commons is that inevitably what he's saying is with the right technology, I guess for explanation real quick, the tragedy of the commons is basically, the example he used, which actually where it came from was back in the day when all these farmers, they had the commons, and the farmers would some farmers who were abusing the system would take their cows out and feed in the common areas that would basically eat all the grass, and they're pretty much taking advantage of the system, and then they go back to their property and they very carefully and allow for the feeding of the grass, and they basically tend their land very carefully, and then they abuse the common. And you can now use those examples for anywhere every day in the cities, and he's saying that technology will actually will deal with that in a new way. As technology becomes more personalized, more real time, more data driven, those things will kind of fall to the wayside and actually benefit the community in a better way. And so I think that's interesting too. But the third one that he kind of touched on it with autonomous vehicles, but I really believe we are now emerging into a society around AI and machine learning, and actually had a great interview conversation with Matt Shobe last week at a specific event in Seattle. I interviewed him in front of 40, 50 people, and his company Spare 5 is really getting into now. They're basically having their thing is Spare 5 is if anyone has 5 spare minutes, they can use the app to edit a picture or upload some data information, compare and correct any incongruencies in data. And they're now getting their entire app, and their users that are doing this on hundreds of thousands, if not millions of scale, are now teaching AI, they're basically training machine learning and AI by the inputs of those individuals, and you can see where this is going. And so we are going to, if not now, live in a society where AI is really immersing itself in the products and services you use, and I think that's scary. I think I mentioned that in front of everyone. I'm like, does that scare you? Does this scare you? You can talk to your phone, and your phone talks to you back. Although very basic, that's AI, that's machine learning. Every single input, it's teaching itself. And so I think that is my prediction, that when he says social media will become passive, I will say AI will become pervasive, and that's both good and bad. So something to kind of worry about, but also understand and take advantage for sure. But it's going to be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, specifically with AI, I mean, we saw Bill Gates and I think Tim Cook and some the big billionaire tech guys come out and they wrote a manifesto, should we say, about how we should deal with it. And I think it's really going to take those big influencers to tame the beast of AI, because it will. I think it'll quickly get out of control, and then those lines are going to have to draw with what's morally right and what's not, and we're going to need those people.
It's all connected, right? You look at number 2, augmented reality is a land grab. In the end, that's surfacing AI, and when these brands are getting in front of us, autonomous vehicles, clearly that's machine learning and some AI going on. I mean, he mentioned in there what happens if a car starts going a different direction than it should. I mean, literally, did it get hacked and it's got people in it and it's driving off course? Those are the things that we have a lot to learn here, and I'm excited for the future. And I'm building products that possibly will utilize machine learning and AI for certain things, but we are very much at a place where we have to think about these sort of things and actually, as product creators, really understand what you're creating and where's the buffer zones, where to be careful, and that is something to really consider.
Totally. Great final thoughts, Nick. Well, perfect. That is all we have today for Tuesday, November 1st. This is Straight Up Startups. I'm Connor. And Nick, you got any final words for us about happenings or things going on? I think you're going on vacation though, right?
I am taking
Nice.
off for a little sun down south, and down in Mexico there for a couple days, and we'll be back next week. I would just tell everyone, stay on Founders Live. Great stuff happening every day. There's new, very, very informative, very cool articles, videos, podcasts. Keeps you in the game.
Fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for watching us for this last hour, and we'll see you next week.